officially open. May your deliberation be fruitful, your collaboration endure, and your vision for a sustainable future ever expands. Thank you, and once again, Ababa to you and Ghana.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, University of Energy and Natural Resources, and the Chair for the conference. Ladies and gentlemen, we were supposed to have in our message this morning the Regional Minister, Honorable Joseph Power. He will be here tomorrow. Yes, he will be here tomorrow. So we'll have the keynote address delivered. And let me just say something briefly about our keynote speaker for the conference. Professor Akbar Said is currently Associate Professor of Information Systems in the Business Technology Management Program at the Lazar Queen's School of Business at Laurier University, Canada. He is also the former director of the Chapel Institute for the Study of Contemporary Africa, based on the same university. He teaches courses mainly related to technology and entrepreneurship, which include cyber ethics, information and communication technology in the developing context of the entrepreneurial environment, specifically focused on startups. His research interests are generally centered on how technology influences both the way we understand ourselves and the way we operate in the world. He has published in the Journal of Management Studies, International Political Sociology, the Journal of Management, and the Journal of Entrepreneurship in technology-infused markets in the developing world. To that end, he researched impediments, I beg your pardon, he researched impediments to entrepreneurial success on scale in Ghana. His current project is focused on understanding how to better train and support Ugandan solopreneurs by building entrepreneurial effectual capacity and providing working capital rules that can be leveraged for long-term business sustainability. He is also currently working on a book that profiles the limitations and failures of humanitarian technologies to solve large-scale crises in the developing world. Recently, he delivered a TED Talk titled "Global Citizenship and the Digital Divide," in which he argued that true transformation in Africa can only be achieved when African youth are able to gain access to knowledge and education through the internet, thereby empowering themselves to become more and more in solving some of the major African problems. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my sincere honor to introduce to you the keynote speaker for the conference, Professor Akbar Said, Laurier University, Canada. Shall we give that one?
Great, thank you very much. It's great to be here with you again. Some of you may recognize me from last year. I have a little bit more my beard and my hair, but I was here last year. I gave a lecture of, well, kind of an address on been a academic professor at Open University. So thank you, first of all, to the organizing committee and to the honored guests here for allowing me to come back a second time. And Ghana is almost like a second home to me. Most of my research is actually done in Uganda. But Dr. Barima Kopi is a very good friend of mine from Open and he's managed to get me here several times. So I've been here at least 3 or 4 times over the last several years. So today, my topic that I decided to talk about, because it is a very interesting time we are in today. I don't know, how much people really think of. You might know a lot of you are researchers. You're researching a particular topic and you're kind of engulfed in that. But you think about the history of man, the history of mankind. We are at a very, very interesting period of our history. These last few years, the things that have happened in technology are unprecedented, especially with AI and what's happening with AI. I am cognizant of the fact that probably more development, more advancement in technology is happening in the West than in the developing world. But believe me, it is coming, right? No matter what's happening over here now, things are going to become much more technologized. And there are some concerns. And I'm a person who teaches about ethics of technology and thinks a lot about ethics of technology. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some biases that occur within algorithms. I know there may be some researchers here who are more technical. I take this from a little bit of a different perspective, and I'll kind of explain that in a second here. Let me see if I can get this. The description of Thomas Edison as being somebody who invented electricity, but he also invented systems that would assist electricity and promote electricity, right? Including companies and like that. So technology actually was successful. Another great example is the keyboard that we use, called kind of that QWERTY, what we call the QWERTY keyboard. QWERTY. Every computer has that keyboard. But that keyboard is not the best keyboard to use. There's actually another keyboard called the Dvorak keyboard. The Dvorak keyboard is much more intuitive and it's much easier for people to type on that particular keyboard. The reason the QWERTY keyboard was actually invented was to slow down typists. Because when it was first, before the advent of computers, they had typewriters and they would get the keys jammed. So what they decided to do was try to slow down by making letters in very distant places when they were written. Right? But that keyboard, for various reasons, has not the Dvorak keyboard. And I'm not getting into the details of why that is, but it's to do with the fact that we have social systems and we have tech and work together. Let's go next. So I come from a background of what we call social studies. Is what we use in my doctoral work to discuss originators of Africa. As I said, to Africa, I was took a plane, right? So obviously the plane was what took me from point A to here on Monday, I was in Toronto to Uganda, and Uganda said that we cannot let you board the plane until you have the visa. And it happened to me a couple of years ago that I was able to get the visa when I landed in Ontario. But this time they didn't allow me to do that. So you can see that a visa is very important, right? If you don't have a visa, you're not going to travel. So many things, the ticketing agent, the visa, the people that handle your luggage, all of these things have to be in place in order for you to make a successful trip, in order for you to fly from point A to point B. So the idea is that it's the assembly of human and non-human actors that generate action, right? So when the action happens, there are human and non-human actors that are involved. And we have to kind of be cognizant of both of those things. The other part of this is what we call is technology is society made durable. And what I mean by that is that when we develop technologies in society, right, well, all of you, some of you are maybe involved in developing technologies, it usually is a reflection of the values that we have in society that become embedded within the technologies. And that allows for action at a distance that we can, through these technologies. Right? And so it is no coincidence that in many of the technologies that we have are not very well suited for have actually been developed in the Western world based on Western principles and Western values. It's Western centered is what we call it. Right? And that's why when those technologies come over to places like here, they don't work as well because there's no cognizance of the fact. There's a whole literature based on that. Okay, let's see the next one. Okay, so why should we care? Or actually, the way I said this is why we should care. So my argument is that we should care about this. And when I say we, I'm not necessarily talking about scientists, but we as society, we as the human race, we as humankind. So there are a couple of things. So first of all, technology is what we call logically malleable. So the idea being that, like for instance, this particular device that I have in my hand here, when it was originally developed, it was developed for communication purposes. But slowly, as time went on, other purposes be used for many other purposes. Does anybody can tell me what other purposes you have besides communication is used for? The phone? What's that? Or photography, yeah. So the fact that we can take photographs with this, and that's a very interesting one, because the digital photography, when it first started, was not very good, but now it's sort of become very advanced. And a company like Kodak, that used to be at the top of photography, close to bankrupt now, because they didn't think that digital photography would be very big. Anybody else? Anything else that we use this for? Any other device that it would? Sorry? Yeah, we can use it for banking. Yeah, as like an ATM almost, right? Except we're not taking money out, but we can do our banking. Right? We can use it as an alarm clock. We can use it for health, monitoring health, for different things. So many different purposes. So that's the logical value. So what that means is that when a technology is developed, what it ends up becoming, we don't know. And that becomes problematic from an ethics perspective, right? Because all these developments are happening in all different directions. Think about AI, for instance, what AI is being used for and what it can be used for. I'll get a little bit more into that. Technology is very pervasive in society, right? All over the place, right? We cannot even, many times, not even do without technology, right? Without our phones. I try to get my students to leave their laptops and phones outside the classroom, but it never works, right? Because they're so attached to it. Technology is unobtrusive, right? We don't even know it's there, right? For instance, for monitoring, for video, like we can have small little cameras in places that people don't even know about, right? So then, next slide. There's also network effects, right? So network effects where systems are now collaborating with each other without human intervention. So all of these things are going on without us even knowing about it. But eventually we don't even need the humans to be involved in that. And then eventually this idea of emotions, right? So AI, one of the questions I have on my cyber ethics exam is, should we give moral consideration to artificial entities like robots and things like that? And the answer that most students give me, which is absolutely right, is wait, once they develop emotions, once robots are able to develop emotions, then at that point you should be thinking about what kind of moral consideration you should be giving it. Right? And that's not here yet, but eventually as things develop, that's going to be an issue. And in fact, there was a case very recently where a developer told the AI that they were going to replace them with a new version of the AI. And the AI actually threatened the developer and said that I'm going to send emails to all your colleagues that you're having an affair. And that was kind of a threat to not, but it wasn't true. The thing is that that's what the AI had reasoned, that this would be something that would prevent them from being closed down. There's also policy vacuums, right? And this is a big problem that the laws that we have in place, even in the West, the laws that we have in place are behind the technology. The technology is developing much faster, and we call these policy vacuums because there's no policy for those particular things. And the other problem is that the legislators themselves don't really understand the technology. Most of them are middle older, and they don't necessarily understand what the implications are of the technology. Right? So this becomes a problem, and the law takes some time to catch up with the technology itself. This is a huge issue that we're having. In fact, many top AI scientists have asked for a moratorium on AI, slowing down AI development. Because they're saying it's going too fast, and we don't actually know what the implications are going to be. So the use of technology through society. So a couple of things, some examples I want to give you, because you may or may not be familiar with these things that are happening right now. Like I said, right now as we speak, over the last year or 2 years, and ongoing. During COVID time, there was a graduation, kind of a robot graduation, but these people were actually graduating, so their faces were on the robot because they couldn't be there in person, and they actually ended up getting their diplomas that way. But if you fast forward that, so that was about 3-4 years ago, and now just recently, in the last 5 or 6 months, or actually this is last year, a robot in China actually got a graduation diploma at high school. Right? So there you go. So things are happening really fast. Let's go next. This is a Tesla car. I'm sure most of you have heard of Tesla, right? Tesla cars. So this car was actually bought by this individual here. And the car was actually sent from the factory driverless. So it drove itself from the factory to the person's car, to the person's house, and delivered itself there. So this is the first kind of driverless car that delivered. Next. And we have these you may have maybe in our crowd, maybe some of them, but these are like robots that move around restaurants. And I saw this in just when I was at a restaurant before I came a few weeks ago, and they deliver the food to the tables, and the waiters and waitresses love them. Right? They love those little robots because they even go and sing happy birthday. So they don't have to do it themselves, right? And it has a little birthday cake on top here, right? So these are already in use, along with things like robotic lawnmowers and snow blowers and all those kinds of things. That's already there. And then another example, the final example, is these driverless cars who are like driverless taxis, right? And I was in San Francisco about 3 years ago, and I pulled up to a traffic light vehicle, and I just looked over, and there was another vehicle next to me, and there was no driver in it. And I started, and it was one of these Waymos, they're called. So they already had permission in San Francisco, California, and Austin, Texas, to actually trial these taxis, and they were actually moving people around, right? And so the prediction is within the next 2 to 3 years, we have to get through legislation. Once we get through that, we're going to have these driverless taxis. In fact, Elon Musk says that your Tesla car, if you buy Tesla, you park it, come to your house, park it in your driveway, and if you want, you can allow it to be part of the grid, and so somebody can summon it for a taxi ride. And so it can be making money for you while you're sleeping. Right? So that's coming. He said that. Okay, let's go. So in all of this, these are just some examples. In all of this, I want to kind of point out what we call the Matthew effect. And the Matthew effect comes from the Matthew book in the Bible, a particular Matthew effect, the idea is that initial advantages that people get from technology, and I'm applying this to technology. So initial advantages that people get from technology will be accentuated even more, will lead to further gains, while initial disadvantages will hinder progress. Right? So those who don't have access to technology versus those who have access to technology, the gap is going to get wider and wider, right, as time passes on. And this is what we actually see, right? The way the West is developing, and even within the developing world, and even with places like Ghana, those who have access to technology versus those who don't, that gap is going to widen even more. Okay, that's good. And so this digital divide that we see, the gap is going to get broader and broader and greater, right? And that's a little bit of a concern from an ethical perspective, especially when you have particular things that you can do only with technology, right? As society starts to shift into becoming more technologized, those who don't have technology are at a big disadvantage. We have to give them access to cyber cafes and things like that if they don't have that ability to have that technology at home, right? Okay. So this is a quote from Mark Zuckerberg, who's the founder of Facebook, who said that access to the internet should be a human right, just like access to water or healthcare. And in fact, my TED talk that I did some years ago, I argued for this particular thing, that access to the internet is very, very important, and it is something that is very fundamental to the advancement of society, right? That, especially as we talk about that Matthew effect and the widening of that gap, we want to try to help try to reduce that. And so I argued that countries that are trying to help the developing world should help them get the internet, help them get connected. And I gave the example of a boy from Mali who just went to the library and saw pictures from a textbook and was able to build a windmill that generated electricity just from the pictures, right? He had no education, but he had the kind of ingenuity. Okay. All right, so I only have, usually I try to make some references to wherever I speak, and this time I didn't have much time to do that. So I only have one reference that is specifically Ghanaian, and this is where I'm talking about the Google search engine, the Google algorithm, which is probably the most dominating algorithm that we have in society, and it is the daddy lumber of algorithms, essentially. The daddy lumber of algorithms. So the best algorithm out there, right? We're told that daddy lumber was the best singer. So it dominates search about 92%, and if you Google something, which I also talk in my class about, is that if two people Google the same thing, they're going to get different results. Why is that? It's because the algorithm uses different points of reference, right, to try to cater to you. So it's not, it's trying to get you to kind of engage with it, right? So it looks to see all these different things and says, okay, this is what, we're going to send to this person. Let's go to the next slide. In fact, this is what happens, and you can't really see the details here, but these are all the updates that have happened in the Google algorithm, right, to make it even better as time goes on, and from the commercial perspective, right? Google is not there to be a charity, right? Google is there to make money, and they make huge amounts of money based on the fact that their algorithm, caters to a particular, perspective or flavor. So now just to specifically talk about the kind of looking more at AI and the algorithms behind AI. And to be clear, I'm not a technologist, so I don't know the technical things as good as some of you do. But the idea being that artificial intelligence or AI is the technique which enables machines to mimic human behavior, like ChatGPT and that, right? So it's looking at a whole bunch of data that has been trained on, and it's giving answers based on that data, right? But it's very important to realize that it's not innovative, right? It doesn't come up with new things. It basically takes what's already out there and then organizes that and packages it in a particular way. Then there's machine learning, which is a subset of AI, which uses the statistical methods to enable those machines to improve with experience, right? So as time goes on, they kind of learn a little bit more. And now, if those of you that use things like ChatGPT, they want you to log on to it. Because now ChatGPT, what it can do is it can remember, it has a memory. So it can remember those things that you ask for, and it can use those things in the future when you ask for other things. Right? Then you get to the deepest one, which is called deep learning. So this is where we try to make the computation of multi-layer neural networks feasible. Right? So this is where we're really trying to understand and mimic the way that the human brain works, because the neural networks in our brain are not sometimes very logical. Right? Sometimes they're not very logical or rational. Right? So they're a little bit different. And like there was a show on TV called Star Trek. Some of you may not know about it. The old Star Trek, where there was a guy named Mr. Spock, and he was a very, very rational person and really thought rationally about everything. But people around him were more human, and they didn't necessarily think rationally about things. Right? So this is what we're trying to mimic in a very, very deep level what the way that humans think. Okay, next. So AI, we understand, is used in many decision-making applications, right? We have AI in the credit space, and these are just the kind of some of the top level, top ones that are where it's used. We have AI used in employment, and especially with things like CVs and resumes. And nowadays, when you're trying to go through hundreds and hundreds of applications, we have AI used in admission at universities, right? Where they're again looking and evaluating applications, and the AI is looking at particular things. In sentencing, in the criminal system, where they're looking at how long people will be sentenced, and also in healthcare, we're seeing AI, right? So these are the top industries where we see AI involved in making decisions to try to make things a little bit more efficient, right? But making things more efficient does not necessarily mean making them better, right? Sometimes there are some ethical concerns that we have to understand. So the bias occurs, is a definition, when the outputs of an algorithm benefit or disadvantage certain individuals or groups more than others, right? Without a justified reason for such unequal impacts, right? So there's an inequality involved there, based on the decisions and actions of the algorithm itself. So the major concern, and this came from some research in 2016, is that we think about AI as being making things more efficient and effective, and much more better decisions, but they're more likely to replicate and reinforce the social biases that already exist in society. So whatever social biases exist in society may be against one particular group. It may be one higher income versus lower income. It may be a particular cultural group. Whatever those biases are, chances are that those biases will end up being reflected in the algorithm itself, because the algorithm is constructed by people, right? By developers, right? They make choices about how they're going to construct those algorithms. So some examples of these kind of bias, right? A large worldwide company created a hiring tool, and those algorithms in that tool systematically discriminated against women who are applying for technical positions, right? Because the algorithm thought that women would not be so good in technical positions, so it discriminated against them. A credit card company, what was happening was the algorithm was actually giving higher credit limits to males versus women, against because there was a bias built into it. And then entrepreneurs, this is from my own research, marginalized entrepreneurs, so people like street vendors and things like that, they are basically biased in terms of the assessment of their credit worthiness, right? Because they don't have bank accounts, they don't have credit cards. How do you assess their credit worthiness, right? If you lend them money, how are they going to pay it back? Well, there are companies now that are looking at other things, other ways to do that. So, for instance, looking at their phone bills and how they pay their phone bills could be one way to assess their credit worthiness. Looking at things like credit cards. Okay. So, just again, the examples in business, discriminatory hiring. So it influences the way that things are hired. We'll talk about why this is in a second. Different groups get unequal access to resources, right? So this is a problem, and also the kind of workplace bias in terms of the backgrounds of those people that are hired, and based on the approach of the algorithm itself. right? Understanding that the algorithm, once it's constructed, it actually gets trained on a data set, right? Just like ChatGPT, right? It's a data set that it gets trained on. So that data set, if it has biases inherent within it, it's going to be reflected in what the algorithm does. So that's one way to look at it in terms of how does the training data affect the model outcomes and the development of the actual models. Because the AI will look at that training data and will create models from that data, which it then uses to assess future decisions and things like that. So I'm not going to go into all these. These are kind of 5 different ways that this bias actually gets reflected in the algorithm. Confirmation bias, what kinds of heuristics? This one is an interesting one around what we call Simpson's paradox, where these there's certain patterns that are viewed in a particular way, but once you add more data, it's actually the opposite that is apparent. And so again, these are kind of things, non-normality, right? The fact that we look for normal curves in data, and sometimes those normal curves are not there. Also, this idea that whatever perspectives we have, those perspectives are confirmed when we look at the data, right? So confirmation bias is what we call it. Okay, let's go next. So 5 different areas of bias in AI around accountability and the fact that designers and developers should be accountable for what they do, and it's a big challenge because recently there was a case where a self-driving car actually hit a person and killed them. And so the question there is, who's responsible? Right? Is it the driver who's responsible? Is it the maker of the software? Is it the maker of the vehicle who's responsible? Right? And that kind of thing, that kind of question is a little bit of, we have to figure that out. The values, right? In terms of the alignment of the values, we should be able to explain how we're doing things and be very open and transparent. There should be fairness, right? In terms of trying to make things more inclusive, as we're talking about minimizing bias. And of course, users have to have rights, right? Because again, that's one of the issues that the companies actually retain a lot of the rights over the data, and it becomes a little bit problematic as time goes on. So, adopting responsible AI. So, just to go over quickly some principles here, right? So, one is around the people, right? Understanding the people and how they develop the algorithms and things like that, and the culture of accountability, that we need to have more accountability within the companies that develop these systems. In fact, it's very interesting that if any of you saw the Trump inauguration, this is the second one, the most recent one. The people that were sitting around him in the White House were actually all of these big technology people, right? The technology guys, like these like Elon Musk, and obviously you probably see him, and others from Facebook like Mark Zuckerberg, and from Amazon, Jeff Bezos. They were all the power brokers now, right? These are the guys that are influencing about what's happening. In particular framework and around design, making use of things like design thinking, which takes care of the perspectives and viewpoints of the end user, and then having address some of the bias. Okay. So when we define design fair algorithms, there are 2 different levels. One is around group fairness, right? So ensuring that decisions are equally distributed across different groups, and then around individual fairness. So people who are similar should have similar treatment, right? So if you have 2 candidates for So if you have 2 candidates for something, those candidates are both treated equally, right? According to this, shouldn't be other factors that result in unequal treatment. There are other ways to do it in terms of what we call different techniques. You can do pre-processing, address the data that's being fed into the algorithm. We can do in-processing, the natural training process. We can look at equitable ways to make sure that the data is being trained, the algorithm is being trained properly with the data. And then post-processing, right, where we focus on the results of this process, and look at the results and say, okay, what does this make sense here? How do we make this more equitable and fair? And there are technologies that are being developed by IBM and others to try to address some of this inequality in the algorithms. Okay, so just to kind of finish up here, in terms of research, because we are researchers here. This is a quote from an article in 2019, and I know we have some computational scientists probably here who are presenting. Develop mathematical techniques to detect and mitigate biases in algorithms. Information system researchers have largely fallen behind in addressing the behavioral, organizational, and social implications, antecedents, and consequences of this issue. Right. So that when I was talking about the social technical, we've looked at a lot of the technical side of things, but we haven't really understand some of the social impacts and how that plays out. So some of the directions for future research in this area, one is around explainable AI. So having the AI itself being able to explain and detect the biases that are inherent in its models, right? And therefore it will be able to point those out itself. The holistic approaches, so we're looking at both the social and technical side of things, right? So making sure that both things are taken care of, and that requires holistic approach requires a lot of collaboration and things like that. As was being mentioned by the speeches just before, that we need that collaboration to happen, right? More case studies on these kind of socio-technical sources and impacts. There should be some global standards for fairness, and this has to be agreed among countries, right? Because AI is really universal and is really it's going to impact all of society. And then the governance and regulation. The government has to have a more stronger position in regulating AI and the development of AI, right? To making sure that it's fair and equitable for all. So just to give you an example, a very, very recent case, which actually just happened, I think this last year in the U.S., and it's the first time that the federal agency has actually come and said that this company here that was using facial recognition, so it's a company called Rite Aid, which is a pharmacy. It's a very big pharmacy, has lots of branches in the U.S. And they were using facial recognition software when people came in. They were letting them know that they were being monitored, but they were using that to try to recognize their faces and match it against a database of those people that were shoplifters. So they wanted to know that people that were coming into the shop, which of these people are more likely to steal something. But what happened as a result of that, in terms of the implementation, was that the workers actually started to harass. Somebody was came up as being suspect. Would actually go and stand next to them, the line, all kinds of proper practices. And this is a big no-no, right? Because you're discriminating against somebody for the potential of doing something, right? They haven't done it, right? You're discriminating. So the federal agency came, Federal Trade Commission actually banned Rite Aid from using facial recognition software. This is the first time that a federal agency has actually come up and banned a company from using AI, particular AI. Okay, so this is the kind of the vigilance that we need. So finally, just to finish up my last slide here, we ultimately want to try to design fair systems. These systems are important, very important, incredibly important, because when these systems get in place, they end up making decisions. And like I said, there's many places where these kinds of decisions are going to be made, including healthcare, which is going to affect who gets treatment, who doesn't get treatment, things like that. Right? So when we look at this in terms of creating and formulating a problem, is the algorithm an ethical solution to the problem? We collect the data, right? And are there any biases in that data, right? So we understand that biases, do emerge in data. In fact, that's the big problem. I mean, we're in a kind of a science college, right? So one of the big criticisms in science is that most of the research and most of the understanding that we have, comes from a particular subset of the population. What population? What subset is that? Anybody? Science? Male, older, and white. right? So male, older.
People who were thinking about the future, and they were thinking that they were right. And so a lot of the sciences that we have, and all that we have, so that needed. So then you test it, right? And before that, of course, you also have the quantitative feedback, right? So once those things are deployed, we then look back and say, is this equitable, right? Are those actually ingredients properly, right? And if they're not, you drop them. Right? In fact, this last during the COVID time, was actually back in the non-white students more than one time person. Why that was so you just got to solve the law. So that's the kind of perspective of it out of the mind as you look forward to all right, that's thank you for and now very much. Professor Akoperi is my professor of education that is our own. Yes, what will happen, as every time, as people want to go out on the side, on the side. It's because of the people that you are using the rights, you are using the max, the
cultural troop display. It was supposed to have been done to herald your presentation, but I think it couldn't have come at a much better time than now because we want to say thank you. So this is our display to say thank you, our keynote speaker, Professor Akbar Said. We are grateful. Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you so much. United Cultural Troop. Thank you. Thank you for that splendid performance, United Cultural Troop. Madam Charity Roberts is the patroness of the cultural troop. And I think Professor Akbar Said will have to see her in chambers for some further tutorials in the Adowa dance. I think that would be very good. It's quite impressive, and we appreciate your enthusiasm and zeal in all of this. We are grateful, Professor Akbar Said. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a very short solidarity message. The one to do that for us is Professor Kofi Bobi Berima, Sergeant Professor, Departments of Medical Laboratory Sciences and Nursing, and Contract Academic Staff, Wilfrid Laurier University, Canada, and also Toronto Metropolitan University, Canada. He would give us about 5 minutes of solidarity message. Shall we give it up for Professor Kofi Bobi Berima?
Professor Chairperson for the occasion, who is also the Vice Chancellor, I would like to stand on the existing protocols that were established by Professor Jesse earlier on to give this solidarity message. I will say that, first of all, I'm bringing you greetings from the Shippo Institute of Studies in Contemporary Africa, where Professor Said has been a former director, and I think he will be a director very soon. As a matter of fact, being a Ghanaian there, as we all teach, I brought him the idea that good things come from Ghana. And in fact, this is the 4th time he's coming to Ghana. And then, when I was the director at Research and Innovation at Ghana Communication Technology University, we started doing some research on solar energy among small-scale entrepreneurs, which we'll talk about it. But now I want to see how we'll be able to move further in that direction. As a matter of fact, I'm very happy to him because this trip that he was coming, Air Canada is on strike. And this also reminds me why we couldn't get the other speaker, Prof. Air Canada is on strike and it's very expensive. In fact, Professor Akbar had to get business class, whatever, because he had an obligation to be here, and he said, no matter what, I'll put in the dollars to come, and I'm very happy. And I'm also happy that he's also find Sunyani to be a nice, as a matter of fact, yesterday something interesting happened. I'm now telling him for the first time. When we drove by car here, and when we got to Linda Door, I ordered fufu and dry fish. He also ordered the same thing, and he was eating. He ate very well, and now that he started dancing, if I don't make sure he goes back, the university will ask me for allowing their prof to stay in Ghana for a long time. this is on shorter. So we thank you very much. One last thing that I would like to add to is that a couple of days ago, Prof. Hogarth, the one who couldn't come, in actual fact, she's a Jamaican. And I've told her that the way she is, and she is very, very distant, maybe she comes from Sunyani. And I wanted to come here, but she couldn't come. She told me that she'll be coming first week in October, but then we will be on recess. The challenge is that if faculty here or people would like to have a meeting with her in Accra, I can arrange it here, I can arrange it. The fact is that she's a very powerful person. She's coming for recruitment. But here, we can't bring people here for recruitment, because why do we want the students to go to another place? I recruit for Wilfred Laurier University as well. That is the collaboration. But one thing is that we are looking of ways of getting scholarships, because we don't have the money. And I've been putting something in her mind that we need scholarship. What can you do? We have very brilliant people who do very well, masters who would like to go out. We can get them there, get scholarship for them. These are some of the things that we can put in their minds, and some things will happen. So please, when the Vice Chancellor was speaking, he talked about collaboration. So when we bring them here, I expect you to collaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Professor Kofi Bovi Berima is an adjunct professor, Departments of Medical Laboratory Sciences and Medicine, and also a contract. Thank you, Prof. Yes, so he's also a contract academic staff at Wilfrid Laurier University and Toronto Metropolitan University, all in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our headline sponsor. Yes, our headline sponsor is Royalty Insurance. We'd like to take a very short message from them, and right after that, there are a couple of things that we would want to share with you. We'll have a coffee break for 10 minutes. Then there will be poster presentations that will follow. The poster presentations will last for about 30 minutes, so we would implore the presenters to stand by their posters right after the coffee break for that session to commence. And then after the poster presentations, we would have a breakout for the parallel sessions, which will comprise 3 parallel sessions actually. There will be one at lecture hall 2, another one at lecture hall 4, I beg your pardon, lecture hall 4, and the next venue will be here at the auditorium, where there will be another parallel session. In case you want to have access to the program outline, the QR code is here. You can scan it, and then you would have a full detail about the program, everything that is there, our speakers, and everything that you want to know about this conference. There will also be a photo session at the frontage. There will be a group photograph when we break out from this first session of the conference. It will involve our distinguished guests and everybody here. So please take note. Professor Chair, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, at this point I'd like to invite a rep from Loyalty Insurance to come and give us a message on their brand and their products. Let's give it up for him.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samuel Ekufu Arthur. I'm the head of business development and expansion for Loyalty Insurance. I must say we are very delighted to be part of this conference, and I think we have a couple of students from this institution joining our company. I must say I must commend the school. We have one of our branch managers being a product of this school. She worked under me for a couple of years, and I think the training you gave her was very good. She just rose. She came. She started about 3 years ago. It's not easy for an insurance company to rise from a position, let's say an underwriter, within 3 years to be a branch manager. It's not easy. But last year, she also was the best worker of Loyalty Insurance. So I would say I'll commend the school for the good work that you are doing. Keep it up. We have quite a number of them in our institution. So I'll give a brief background of Loyalty Insurance. Loyalty Insurance is a Ghanaian-owned, 100% Ghanaian-owned company. Our parent company is Frames Oil. So we are financially very, very liquid. We are very, very liquid. So we have been in existence for about 70 years now. We grow year by year. We also, I'll give you our products. Currently, we have our motor insurance, which comes in 3 products. That's the comprehensive, the third party, and we have the third party fire and theft. For Loyalty, if you buy motor insurance from us, because we believe in technology, and now we are entering the digital space. I know most companies, most of the time when you buy insurance for them, they give you fuel coupons. We have gone further. Now, if you do any motor insurance with us, once your number hits our dashboard, you get a digital reward in the form of mobile money. Once the number is correct, it has a mobile money. You are connected to any of the networks. You get mobile money on your wallet. Also, with the comprehensive, like I said, you get to cover everything about your vehicle, including own damage, third-party property damage. Then also, once the car causes injury to other people, you're also covered. We also have a product called the homeowners insurance. This is for those of us that own homes. We cover you for your property, that's the house, the content in there. Even our house helps those who come to work for us. It also extends to cover you, the house owner, in the form of personal accident insurance. We also have the householders insurance for those of us that are renting. Most of the times, we also experience theft and burglary. For instance, we could be here, we get home, your home has been burgled. Stuff has been taken from your home. You have insurance cover that will cover you for the unforeseen events. These premiums are very, very, very small. I can actually say that premiums you pay for motor insurance is quite higher than those that you have for the homeowners. We also have personal accident insurance. I believe most of us here, being students, being researchers, as we go along doing our businesses, we encounter challenges. There will be some accidents, unforeseen. The insurance product that will cover you should unforeseen happen, and you get some compensation. If there's free cover for your medicals, if death, at least your family benefits from. I'll get some compensation for that. So we have public liability. We believe that areas like this or institutions like this need such products because me, for instance, not a student. I'm visiting. This one, when I came, I realized the cleaner was cleaning the lobby, and there was no one inside. For instance, if I slip and fall, the school is liable for that. I might go to the extent of maybe taking the school to the court. You might be fined huge sums. So there's an insurance cover the school actually can take for this. Should any such happen, at least you can fall on that. You don't need to dip into the school's coffers to pay that. It's also very important. Okay, we have also professional indemnity. Most of us here are professionals. Sometimes in our line of duty, people rely on for professionalism, rely on our data or information, and might have some financial losses due to they relying on our advices. We can take insurance to cover that as well. I'll end also by saying that we've mounted a desk behind. We have some souvenirs. You can pass by, pick one for yourself. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Samuel Ekufuata, for that brief presentation. Loyalty Insurance. Please visit their stand. They are at the front desk over there, and then have more conversations with them. And he mentioned that once you come in for a motor insurance, there will be a reward of cash in mobile money. And people were asking me, how much? How much? You were interested, right? How much? Because you see, the other day, a colleague of mine who owns a drugstore said that somebody came there and bought some medicine. And he said, I wanted to pay with Momo. It's okay, go ahead. So he gave him the number, and the guy just did a transfer. So the moment the guy saw the message flash, so yeah, it's in. So the guy left. Later on, he went back to the message to check, and it was 1 CD that the guy had transferred. It was a very smart one. But he had already left. So this one, we met. Let us know before we do the transaction. Okay, it's just a reward. Yes, I'd like to invite one of the technical committee members to come with some announcements before the breakout. When we break out from here, we will move to the frontage of the building for the group photograph. And then after that, we would go for the coffee break for 10 minutes, and then the poster presentations will follow for 30 minutes. And then there will be eventually the breakout for the power sessions, which will comprise 3 sessions. One at the lecture hall 2, another one at lecture hall 4, and the other one will be here at the auditorium. So ladies and gentlemen, shall I hand the microphone over to Pastor Dr. Benjamin Dakwansamwa as a member of the technical committee.
All right, thank you, my brother. For the first time, I'm not here to pray. I nearly said praise the Lord. Anyway, so for the April sessions, we just want to give some details. So at lecture hall 2 will be the big data analytics and machine learning, Internet of Things, cyber security, and digital forensic, moderated by Professor Patrick K. Mensah. Lecture hall 4 will be the water, sanitation, and hygiene, WASH, HR-based solution for climate change impact. So please, let's take notes of that. Chaired by Engineer Professor Emmanuel Kwesi Nyantechi. So we are encouraging all of us to move to these places when it is time. Then here in the auditorium will be moderated by Professor Imalo Mafu Owusu, the multidisciplinary studies on emerging and re-emerging diseases. We also want to bring to the notice of participants and presenters that if you look at the program, there's going to be an award ceremony tomorrow. And so there'll be a team going around and be scoring for the posters and also the
Yes, so the first photograph will be taken here. That will comprise Professor Akbar and the Vice Chancellor, Professor Fosu Jesti, and then Professor Kofi Bobi Berima. They will be up here, and then Professor, I think the 2 professors here can join. Yes, the deans can also join. That would all move out, and then would have the group photograph over there. Thank you very much. Yes, so Professor Nyentechi. Okay. So after this one, there will be another one with the Vice Chancellor and the LOC members. Please, before we move out. Thank you. Please, the LOC members, the local organizing committee members, please come and join. Please, shall we move out for the group photograph?